Vielen herzlichen Dank, lieber
Thank you so much, dear Federal President Alexander van der Bellen.
For your very thoughtful words, dear Mr. President. President van der Bellen reminded us, ladies and gentlemen, that last year, at a time when many international climate events could not be held, the 4th Austrian World Summit did manage to convene, and we were so grateful to the entire team that was able to make that happen. Our next speaker was also here with us last year as a long-standing supporter of the Austrian World Summit. It is a pleasure to hand over the floor to the Chancellor of Austria, Sebastian Kurz.
We all have responsibility when it comes to fighting climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, dear President, dear guests of honor, but especially dear Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm so happy to be able to welcome you all here, to be able to meet you after 18 months. It's a great pleasure that this Austrian World Summit can take place in the way, shape and form that we are used to, so that we can back to normalcy, and that a long time of the pandemic and of doing without so many things, we can have such an event. The virus has not gone away. But I think we can confidently say that the worst is behind us, and maybe we can do a little test. I would like to ask everyone who has at least received one jab to raise their hands. Okay, so we're still waiting for the translation. So is there anyone who has not received one jab? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. And I think this really goes to show that we have made enormous progress when it comes to getting back to normal. And thank God we can ease the restrictions. July 1st will be a day that we will always remember. I see Arnold Schwarzenegger nodding because we have been easing restrictions. We're getting back to normal. And this is a good thing, and I think it's a very nice feeling that we can all enjoy together. I'm firmly convinced that after the easing of restrictions, we will return to normal. And many events will be held the way we used to have them. We also have a chance to stand still and to think about the things that we want to maintain, about the things that we want to change. And we, as federal government, really consciously made use of this pandemic in order to grasp the opportunity to foster change. Like many countries of this world, we tried to come up with many measures for fostering economic recovery, fostering decarbonization, thermal rehabilitation, distance heating, local heating, the exchange of heating containers. So we earmarked 5 billion euros for an investment premium. This is a huge sum in order to get the economy back on track, in order to curb the impact of the pandemic, banking on greening, on the fight against climate change. And the means from the European Recovery Fund, of course, we should use them in order to invest in the climate. We exceeded expectations, and we are among the countries having reached the highest percentage rates when it comes to investing in the climate. So these are huge possibilities in order to perceive the crisis as an opportunity and to get closer to the goal mentioned by Arnold Schwarzenegger to become climate neutral by 2040 and to generate 100% electricity from renewables by 2030. But of course, we are also supporting the goals of the European Union. They are also very ambitious, but I have to add that we need a global, we need an international approach, because it would be worse if the standards, the high standards in Austria and in Europe would be raised even more, and if we would import products to Europe which were produced under less stringent standards, because this would not be for the benefit of the population, and it wouldn't be for the benefit of the climate. It's always a climate, a global climate war that we are waging, and it's very important to reconcile climate protection with competitiveness, and also protecting those parts of the population which are most vulnerable, thereby living up to the motto that you can see here behind me. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to share one thought with you that seems to be very apt in view of the pandemic. What are the things that humankind can accomplish? So when the COVID pandemic started, so we have seen that this is a once-in-a-century pandemic connected to the biggest economic crisis that we have been through. And 1 year later, there was the vaccination, global cooperation, research, pharmaceutical companies, eminent researchers from all over the world. They teamed up and developed a vaccine at breakneck speed in order to conquer a once-in-a-century pandemic. Where there is a will, there is a way. So if humankind pulls in concert, then the impossible becomes possible, and it shows the force and the power of research and innovation. And dear Arnold, I was so impressed to hear about the way you presented your fight against climate change, how you brought forward arguments and what your goal is. Because listening to the discussions I had recently, I very often had the feeling that there is some moral grandstanding, that there is a finger-wagging approach and a constant, there is constant talk of bans. You talked about pickup trucks, you also talked about travel, mobility, you also talked about progress. And I think this is exactly what we need if we want to be successful in tackling climate change. If we want to reduce emissions, then this will not be made possible by a finger-wagging approach, but not by getting back to a mentality that is totally out of date. So I'm a strong advocate of progress, the force of humankind. I believe in science, in innovation, and I'm firmly convinced that we will be able to if we pull in concert, that we will be able to become even better, to act more sparingly on the environment, to develop new technologies, so that we can organize conferences such as these, so that we can enable traveling, mobility also in the future with fewer emissions and with more responsibility vis-à-vis the planet. Dear Arnold Schwarzenegger, thank you most cordially for your initiative, and also thank you so much for making us go wow when it comes to tackling climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to Chancellor Kurz, to President van der Bellen for their speeches. And of course, Governor Schwarzenegger, I loved your talk. And anytime you get to hear Arnold quote Arnold, I am all in. But the thing I loved was your message of hope. Because I think that is something that can feel daunting right now. And honestly, as you were talking, it takes me back to President John F. Kennedy in the 1960s when he made a bold statement, when he said we would send a man to the moon and bring him back. And at the time, it seemed impossible. It seemed like it couldn't be done. And he gave a speech that really stuck with me. He said, we choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon and do these other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And I thought, that's what we're doing here. We're choosing to do something hard. We're choosing to try to save the earth. And that's when you think, what could be more audacious than sending somebody to the moon? Saving the earth. Plus, I would love to hear the speech that you would give with that one. We choose to save the earth because it's hard, like my pectoral muscles. So do some push-ups and stop polluting.